This week on the Communicators, a discussion on how copyright, privacy, and piracy policy affects public libraries. Our guest is Emily Sheketoff of the American Library Association.
Our guest this week on the Communicators, Emily Sheketoff, the Washington Office Executive Director of the American Library Association. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you very much for having me.
And joining us in the questioning for our time together, Paul Sweeting of the website Content Agenda serves as their editor. Thank you to you as well.
Good to be here.
Ms. Sheketoff, in the broadest sense, why would the American Library Association need a Washington office?
Well, we represent librarians, libraries, and the people who use libraries. And we have found over the last 50 years that the government has a direct impact on allowing us to deliver the kind of services that we want to make sure we can. So we started with a very small office that worked with the Congress, and we've grown now to a government relations office that works with the Congress and the executive branch, and also the Office of Information Technology Policy, which works with other organizations in Washington and other policy promoters to make sure that as technology is developed, it develops in a way that can be used in the library and that we have the rights to be able to use it. Libraries understood very early on the importance of the Internet. So we became involved in the Internet, and now over 99% of public libraries offer free access to the Internet. And that's very important. Across this country, 73% of public libraries are the only access point for the public. In rural America, 83% of public libraries are the only place that offers free access. So we want to make sure that we can continue to deliver that access. And as more and more services are available electronically, as more and more technology develops so that we have e-books, so that we have databases, we have practice tests, we have homework help, all available online, that libraries can continue to deliver those services. And that means making sure that copyright law stays in protection of users' rights, making sure that broadband deployment is available. There are a number of issues that both affect the government, affect congressional laws, and just as policy develops, making sure that libraries are part of that mix.
And as you look to government, whatever area of government you're looking at, are they generally responsive to your needs? Do they get what you are talking about, or I guess your concerns? Or and if not, how do you have to go about convincing them?
Well, sadly, they do not get our needs. Sadly, we find more and more people haven't been in a library in the last 20 years. They're shocked when they go into a library to see the teen room, to see gaming nights, to see the people lined up for hours waiting to get access to a terminal. Many members of Congress are surprised when they drive by a public library late at night and they see the parking lot full with people sitting in the parking lot on their laptops making use of the wireless that is available in the public library. The Department of Education is just beginning to learn the extent of the online homework help libraries offer. And as we're trying to educate people about changes in No Child Left Behind, we want to make sure that school libraries are part of any change. Because as it stands now, school libraries and school library media specialists are not part of No Child Left Behind. And that means that many children are being left behind because it is the school librarian who teaches information literacy. So as we try and create a 21st century workforce, having information literacy skills is crucial. And the person who teaches those skills in the school, beginning in elementary school, is the school librarian.
Paul Sweeting.
Let's discuss some of the copyright issues that you referred to. There was a case recently settled that was brought by the book.
Possibly settled.
Possibly settled. Brought by the book publishers and the Authors Guild against Google. And there is an agreement, although it hasn't yet been accepted by the court. it seems that it could have implications both ways for libraries. There are some good things about it, but there are some that I think could be problematic for.
Well, and this is a perfect example of making sure that people, judges, and other people in the policy arena understand library services. As we've been briefed by Google, it appears that this settlement would have a direct impact on libraries that nobody has really thought through.
And could you give a quick explanation of the case?
Certainly. Google, a number of years ago, Google signed partnership agreements with 4 libraries to digitize their collection and make the digital information available through Google, which is a very admirable desire. And they said that they would start with information that belonged to the library or was in public domain. The publishers sued Google over this agreement, and they've been very concerned that published works that they hold copyright on will be digitized, and then the copyright will be infringed upon. It appears that this settlement, Google is saying that they will offer a terminal in every library that will have these digitized materials. We're not exactly sure, are they talking about Google putting a terminal in every public library? Where's it going to go? What's it going to be connected to? Where's the bandwidth coming from? We know in many libraries in this country, there's no physical space. We have maxed out on physical space for workstations. That's why many libraries have moved to wireless and laptops, because they have no room for another terminal. We know we have inadequate bandwidth. So how is that going to work?
And what has Google told you about how libraries can make use of the information?
Well,
what is it?
It's not clear. It is also not clear on what impact is this going to have on the constitutional protection of first sale and fair use. What impact is this going to have on the information that libraries have already digitized on their own? Is there some sort of business model? We're not aware of it yet. And the biggest problem is, are we creating a gigantic monopoly in Google where all this information is only going to be available through Google?
We should point out here that part of the proposed settlement includes the creation of something called the Book Rights Registry, in which would be essentially a clearinghouse of information about the copyright of various books and the copyright owners. And it would also be a clearinghouse for payments to those authors and publishers.
But if Google owns the copyright to all this material,
right,
what kind of licensing fee are they going to pay? And are they going to charge a reasonable fee in the beginning, and because they're a monopoly, increase that fee over time? We've seen in the publishing world, electronic subscriptions their prices have gone up astronomically, and they are almost unaffordable now for libraries, both public libraries, school libraries, and academic libraries. And most of those subscriptions, almost all of them, are owned offshore. And so we have no control over that. Now, in this country, we have a...
I'm sorry, but so whose laws govern in a situation like
What
that?
What an excellent question. Because in this country, we have a constitutional protection of fair use and for sale, and that is how libraries function. If a library purchases something, it has the right to loan it to its cardholders.
That's the first sale doctrine.
That's the first sale doctrine. The fair use doctrine says that information can be used for the betterment of this country to pursue arts and science. So that's the whole education. That's the whole idea of helping people. That's the whole idea of using this information to develop more information, so that as we pursue science and health information, we can use information that's been developed in the past to help develop more information in the future. Not every country has those things. And so if this information starts being owned offshore, whose law is protected? And how are our rights protected? And that's what we're most concerned about, is protecting the rights of the users in this country.
How did that situation come about? Is it just because the owners of these databases happen to be foreign companies, or foreign-based companies, or was there some strategy on the part of the publishers to take them out of the jurisdiction of the U.S. copyright law?
I believe it was commerce. I don't see any, excuse me, I don't see any venal cabal at work here. I just think it's commerce.
Let me talk about a related issue when it comes to copyright. This year, the administration just signed into law something called as the Pro-IP bill, which parts of it, if not all, deal with issues of copyright. Give our viewers a sense of broadly what this bill talks about, and directly, how does this impact the association and libraries?
Well, this bill, for the first time, creates a government-sponsored enforcement mechanism where, unfortunately, taxpayer dollars are going to be used to enforce copyright, other than normal law enforcement. So now you've got people whose first look at something is you're guilty and you must prove yourself innocent, which is contrary to the way we believe things should be.
Can you give an example of what that would mean?
Well, we've seen in the past the recording industry has decided that the way they were going to enforce their copyright on music was to sue 12-year-old children who download music. So rather than following the Apple model of creating a business model where you sell music online, which has been very successful, they decided to prosecute people who infringed upon their copyright. The Motion Picture Association in the 1980s tried to outlaw technology with the Sony Betamax lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court. We were involved in that, where we're saying, don't outlaw technology, but come up with a business model that allows you to use technology. So in the Motion Picture Association, don't outlaw video cassette recorders, start renting movies. I mean, now they make billions of dollars every year from video rentals. Now that instead of Netflix...
Although, ironically, they tried to stop the video rental market when it first arose and actually went to Congress and tried to repeal, essentially, the first sale doctrine with respect to video cassettes.
And so, let's not be short-sighted. Let us embrace technology. Let us, I say to the content providers, look at technology and come up with a business model to make money. I'm all in favor of capitalism, just not at the expense of the people who are trying to use this information.
Well, the folks who are supporting the Pro-IP bill, content industry, but also a broad range of industries, actually. A lot of the effect will fall in the trademark area and so forth, and affect fake Louis Vuitton bags and so forth. But their premise is that, look, we're in a post-industrial economy. We're in an information-based economy. Most of the wealth that's going to be created in the United States and in the West over the next millennium is going to be based on information and intellectual property rather than on manufacturing or industrial production. And so we have a law enforcement system that is basically misaligned for the modern world. We have a lot of resources dedicated to real property crimes and things like that, and less focused on intellectual property and protecting the wealth that it creates. Is that not a valid perspective?
It is, but rather than looking at the problem as you are guilty and prove that you are innocent, you should be looking at, okay, here's technology, here's information that is very important. How can I, using technology, sell this information? iTunes has certainly done an excellent job of that.
Although the record companies have to some degree come to rue the deals they made with iTunes, because...
But I can't help them there. There were very smart, aggressive lawyers who negotiated those deals.
They sure were.
They, if they need different lawyers, so be it. But why punish people who are trying to access legitimate information because of that?
So is the idea that under this act, if I go to a library and download a song and I don't pay for it, then the library could be held liable?
And the instrument that you downloaded it upon can be seized.
If it was used in the alleged infringement.
Got it.
So that is a nightmare for libraries because one of the librarian's core values is protecting library patron privacy. So we don't want to do anything that would in any way jeopardize a patron's privacy. So we don't spy on our patrons. We don't monitor what they're doing in the library, on the terminals, in any way. And so it appears that this law is going to seriously jeopardize how a library functions.
Give an example. How does a library change its day-to-day operations in light of the law?
Well, that is exactly what we're wrestling with right now, is how do we balance our core value of protecting privacy at any cost and making sure that all of our equipment is not seized by an overzealous government.
One more, if we can turn the topic just a bit. I was reading that your organization had addressed President-elect Obama and his team regarding financial input for libraries in the tune of a one-time request for $100 million in stimulus funding. Why go to the folks there, and what are you looking to do with that money?
Well, we realize that we are in very tough economic times, and we have seen library usage go up over 50% in the first half of 2008. We know that libraries are the first place that unemployed and underemployed people in this country are turning to. It is the place that they go to learn how to do a resume, to look for a job, to practice tests, all that sort of thing. And we know that in many instances, companies require you to apply for a job online. And we know that there are tens of millions of people in this country who do not have a computer at home and are unemployed, so they don't have a computer at work. So they are depending on the public libraries. At a time when, because tax revenues are down, public libraries are being forced to close in the evenings and close on the weekends, and so the resources are not available for them. So as part of an economic stimulus package to get our people back to work, we want to be part of that. And we feel that $100 million as a one-time situation will help us keep the libraries open at night and on weekends and hire short-term, part-time people to help at the computer, teaching people how to file a resume online, how to apply for a job, how to work on interview skills, and all the things it's going to take to get America back to work.
That's face-to-face, but what does it do for increasing the amount of terminals and space, which you had initially said that was a problem?
It won't do anything to help that. I mean, that we're talking about a short-term emergency dealing with the fact that we have over 800,000 people have registered for unemployment in the last 2 months, getting those people back to work. The long-term issue about bandwidth and access to terminals, that is going to have to be done on much more sustained, measured evaluation. And we know if you look at Senator Obama's, President-elect Obama's technology plan, he is looking at how are we going to address bandwidth in this country. We just completed a study which shows that 17% of the libraries in this country say that they can't get access to the adequate bandwidth, that 21% can't.
And why is it? And why can't?
Because broadband is not available, that 21% cannot afford to increase their bandwidth, and in rural America, 25% cannot get access to adequate bandwidth because it's just not there.
Will the recent decision by the FCC to open white spaces to wireless broadband be of any help?
It could if libraries are part of being able to get access to that. I mean, they've just made the announcement 2 days ago.
Right.
We don't have any details yet. But we as a country need to address this.
And what is your sense from your contacts with the Obama campaign and from looking at his policy, what is your sense of where libraries fall in the priority list there as far as broadband
Well, we're
access?
gratified that when President-elect Obama was a senator, he spoke to the American Library Association. He carries a library card around with him in his wallet. He has been to libraries, so he knows what we can do. And we've talked to people on his campaign, so we are confident that they understand how we can contribute to the economic, our attempts to improve the economy. We think that we really want to be a part of that, and we can be. He also understands that we are going to be an information economy and that we need to make sure that we have a 21st century workforce. And I hope his education people understand that it is the school librarian who is crucial to making sure that students are ready, that students have the information that they need and the training that they need.
Just by way of information, libraries are specifically mentioned within the plan. It's one of the bullet points, which says, if you go to the Obama website, or President-elect Obama's website, it says, bringing broadband to our schools, libraries, households, and hospitals. A couple of the things that are mentioned, though, that might, if you wanted to talk about, was the effort of redefining what broadband is in the United States. Talked about wireless spectrum issues. He also talked about changing up the Universal Service Fund, which was also an issue that was supposed to be taken by the FCC, and then encouraging public-private partnerships. Out of all those, how do libraries intersect with those proposals?
Well, on the Universal Service Fund, for example, some of that fund is used for E-rate, which is the electronic E-rate discounts given to schools and public libraries to help them pay for access to information. And we participate in that program. We are able to offer free internet access because of the E-rate, but it is a very complicated process, and many libraries don't have the staff to be able to participate. So we have filed with the FCC a request for simplification of that process. And we're hoping that a Democratic FCC will look at our filing and take some action on it. We are also hopeful that the Universal Service Fund continues to fund E-rate because it is necessary to maintain our ability to offer this public access, which, as we can see, 71%, 83%, it's crucial to this country. And as far as the bandwidth issue, bandwidth is constantly changing. You know, what you require in bandwidth today is going to increase tomorrow. As more and more applications become more and more complicated, they require more bandwidth. And as the government, both the federal government, state government, and local governments, push more and more of their services only available online, that is also going to require more bandwidth. And I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about an issue that FEMA has, FEMA from the federal government. As your viewers know, FEMA goes into a disaster area and helps them get back on their feet. Very admirable. Both in Hurricane Katrina and most recently in the Iowa floods, FEMA has gone in, immediately starts helping people file. What are they going to do? FEMA sends people to the public library and tells them, go there to file your claim, go there to get access to the information, where can you go, how can you reestablish your identity, all these services. Great. And then when the public library turns around and applies to FEMA for emergency aid to be able, in places where they've been flooded out or destroyed, to be able to set up a temporary spot, FEMA says, oh no, the public library isn't an essential service, and so we won't give you aid. Well, that's got to change.
Another unfunded government mandate right there. Can we shift topics a little bit here?
Go for it.
Digital rights management. Favorite topic of librarians, I know. The United States Copyright Office is in the process of of carrying out its triennial review of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act and considering proposed exemptions to the ban on circumventing encryption for particular types of works or uses. I know that ALA has been involved in that process in the past. My guess is you don't want to talk about what you might be filing this time around yet, but can you talk a little bit about the impact that digital rights management has had in libraries in terms of access to information or format shifting or archiving or any of the ordinary things that a library does?
Well, this is a very important issue for us, and so once again, we will be filing comments. They aren't written yet, so I can't give you a preview. But the reason we do file comments every year is because for a library to do what is necessary, making sure that they can preserve the information that they have created, that they can preserve their collection, and that they can deliver the services which now are services of not only loaning books, magazines, and newspapers, videos, talking books, and other things, but also electronic information and practice tests and homework help and a number of things. We need to make sure that there is no restriction on our access to that. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the law says that the law for sale says that when you buy a book, you can loan that book. And when you get a license for a subscription, you can offer that subscription based on the terms of your license. But let's say you have a book and it is a rare book and you want to protect it, and so you want to digitize it. Well, that changes the format. Now, in the past, when you had a newspaper and you wanted to preserve it, you could put it on microfiche, and that was allowable. But now, when we want to digitize something, all of a sudden they want to change the rules and say, well, no, now you have to buy it again as a digitized product. And we want to just make sure that things that we have purchased, that we have the rights to, just because we want to change the format doesn't change our ability to loan them. We want to make sure that we can preserve information that is important, and we want to make sure that people can continue to get access to information. Now, a lot of places microfiched, microfilmed, but those readers are degenerating, and so that information is not going to be available unless we put it into another format. We shouldn't have to repurchase it. We've already purchased it. So we're not trying to take money away from legitimate rights holders. We're just trying to make sure that as technology changes, our patrons can continue to get access to the information.
And what about information that is essentially born digital and comes to you wrapped in digital rights management? How does that...
Well, it's very complicated.
Like a DVD, for instance.
We purchased it. We should be able to continue to loan it out. If DVD players, just like VCRs are sort of going away and they're being replaced by DVDs, what about all of our videotapes? Shouldn't we be able to transform them into the next media so that people can continue to look at them? We purchased them, we own them, but now the method of viewing them is changing, so we should be able to view them in the new media.
We've got about a minute left, but if people get more access to broadband, if people get more access to personal computers, or at least access to digital information, and some of that information can be found instead of libraries, what's the role of the library in the future? Will we still see an establishment where you actually have hard books or just a bunch of terminals?
Well, it's very funny. I came to the library world 10 years ago, and people said, well, you're not going to need libraries anymore. And yet, last year, we increased the number of people who came to libraries, and we increased the amount of materials that were borrowed. We had 1.3 billion visitors last year. 2 billion items were borrowed. And people will always want to read books as paper, even when they're reading electronic books on a reader. People are still going to want to come into the library to use the terminals. Even if they have a computer at home, they don't have the librarian at home. And we know that the librarian is a key to recommending good books to read, to recommending new games to play, and other things. So we're confident that in the next 10 years, in the next 20 years, in the next 50 years, people are still going to want to be coming to the library to borrow books, to borrow magazines, to look at newspapers, and to look at our electronic resources as well.
Our guest on this edition of the Communicators, Emily Sheketoff of the American Library Association, serves the Washington office executive director, and helping us with the questioning, Paul Sweeting of Content Agenda. It's a website, contentagenda.com. He serves as their editor. To both of you, thanks for being on the Communicators.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. And thank you.